Most new writers build villains like Halloween costumes. They put on a mask, evil smiles, dark coat, sharpened knives, and they call it a day. And then they wonder why the book doesn't tighten, why the tension won't hold, why the villain feels like a cardboard cut-out prop tab in the corner of the scene, waiting to be noticed. Here is the ugly truth. A psychological thriller doesn't collapse because your plot is weak. It collapses because your antagonist isn't real. Not real as in you can shake their hand. Real as in they have a human logic running under the surface. Something they tell themselves in the quiet moments that makes them feel justified, even kind, even necessary. And that's where the dread comes from. Because the scariest villains don't think they are villains. They think they are the only adult in the room, the only one who can keep things stable, the only one who can help. They don't kick the door in. They hold it open and gesture for you to go first. Welcome back. This is episode 3 of a Zero to Noble series, and today we are going to build the kind of antagonist that doesn't need to twirl a mustache or deliver a villain monologue. We are going to write villains who are not evil. We are going to write villains who are right in their own minds. By the end of this episode, you will have a simple framework to design any psychological thriller antagonist. 3 antagonist types you can plug into your story immediately. And a practical scene method that creates Silence of the Lambs style tension, polite conversion with teeth, predator-prey dynamics, information as power. And as always, yes, there is homework, because villains don't live in your head, they live on the page. So write this down. This is the rule that separates a villain from a prop. A psychological thriller villain is a rational belief wearing a human face. The belief comes first. Not the violence, not the threat, not the twist, just the belief. Because a villain who believes nothing is just noise. They can't do anything at a time, which sounds exciting until you realize it is meaningless. Readers don't fear randomness, they fear intention. So here is your villain framework. 5 parts. Simple enough to remember when you are half asleep and the book is fighting you. Let's go for the first one. Number 1, the belief. What the villain tells themselves is true. The moral story they live inside. Let me give you some examples. I am protecting them from themselves. Truth ruins people. I preserve stability. They are at risk. Someone has to manage them. They owe me. This is for the greater good. Let's check number 2, the goal. What the villain wants in this story. Not vaguely, just specifically. Control, silence, dependency, custody, confession, a signature, a diagnosis, a label, access. Let's check number 3, the method. How they pursue that goal. In psychological thrillers, the best methods are often polite. Paperwork, procedures, social pressure, reputation, concerns. Number 4 will be the leverage. What they have that the protagonist cannot ignore. Maybe a secret, a wound trigger, a gap in memory, a relationship, an institution's authority. Evidence, real or manufactured. Number 5 is going to be the cost. the price they force the protagonist to pay. In a psychological thriller, the villain doesn't just raise the stakes. They raise the price of being believed, or being safe, or being loved. The cost is often identity. Let me give you some examples. You can have peace if you accept my version of reality. You can be safe if you stop asking questions. You can keep your family if you swallow the lie. That is the genre, that bargain, that slow squeeze. Let's clear something up. An antagonist is not always a single person. In psychological thrillers, the antagonist can be a system or a family narrative, maybe a diagnosis, a small town that closes ranks like a feast, a relationship where love and threat share the same bed. But whether it is a person or a system, the job stays the same. Keep the protagonist from the truth. That truth might be a memory, a crime, an identity fracture, the fact that they are being manipulated, or the fact that they did something they can't survive admitting. So don't ask, who is my villain? Ask, what force is determined to keep this truth buried, and why? Because once you know why, you can engineer the pressure, a scene by a scene, like tightening a bolt. Let's check the 3 antagonist types. Type number 1, the intimate antagonist, a spouse, a parent, a best friend, a therapist perhaps, even a caretaker, someone close enough to touch the steering wheel of your protagonist's life. Intimacy is terrifying because it gives access, and access is control. The intimate antagonist doesn't need to threaten you with a knife. They threaten you with a sentence said softly, at the right time, in the right room. Let me give you some examples. You are remembering it wrong. You are tired. You do this when you are stressed. I am worried about you. Let me handle it. The protagonist can't simply punch them and run because they lose something if they do. Home, love, stability, the last person who knows them. That is the trap, obligation, history, the weight of shared life. And here's the psychological trick. The intimate antagonist can be charming, they can be gentle, they can be the person who makes tea. That's what makes them lethal. Let me check number 2 with you guys. Type number 2, the institutional antagonist. Hospitals, courts, schools, police procedure, social services, human resources departments, anything that can label you and file you away. Institutions don't have to be evil. In fact, they are scarier when they are not. They are scarier when they are confident, when they sound reasonable. Because an institution can gaslight you legally. Once the systems decide who you are, unstable, unreliable, non-compliant, every protest becomes proof of the label. Every attempt to be heard sounds like hysteria. A form becomes a muzzle. A note becomes a weapon. This is pure psychological thriller fuel because the protagonist is trapped in a room made of policies. Let's check type number 3, the internal antagonist. Addiction, compulsion, paranoia, dissociation, trauma triggers, memory distortion, sleep deprivation that turns the edges of reality soft and unreliable. The protagonist can't outrun it, they carry it. Internal antagonism is where the book gets personal. The scariest scene becomes someone staring at their own reflection thinking, am I the problem? Did I do it? Can I trust what I remember? What if I am the monster? Now, listen carefully. The strongest psychological thrillers often combine all three types. The intimate antagonist destabilizes. The institution traps. The internal antagonist fractures. That combination is your storm. Now we build. This is the part where you stop hoping your villain feels creepy and start making them work like a machine. Write the belief sentence. Start with, I am doing this because. If your villain can't finish that sentence, they will drift. They'll do random things. Your plot will wobble. Examples. I am doing this because they are unstable and need containment. I am doing this because the truth will destroy the family. I am doing this because nobody else will protect the child. I am doing this because they got away with it. So next step will be to define the target. What does the villain want from the protagonist? Not to hurt them, that is vague. Pick something that creates story, silence, confession, compliance, dependency, control of narrative, a signature, a diagnosis, a relocation, or an act that makes the protagonist look guilty. Targets create a strategy. Step number 3, choose the method. This is really important. How does the villain get what they want? In psychological thrillers, the method is often one of these: politeness, social pressure, charm, concern. The procedure: forms, calls, records, diagnosis, legal steps. Isolation, discredit allies, remove support, rewrite reputation. The mirroring, reflect the protagonist's fears back at them. And the forced choices, every option harms them. Let's look at step number 4, choose the leverage. What does the villain have? This is where content on the last episode number 2, plugs in. The best leverage is the protagonist's wound, because the wound already controls the protagonist. The villain simply touches it and watches them flinch. If you have missed episode 2, go and check it out and you will understand the wound triangle. Let me give you some leverage examples. A missing memory, a hidden incident, a dependency, a reputation risk, an institution's authority, a secret they have known. Now let's check step number 5. Give the villain a line they won't cross. This is crucial. It makes them human and therefore scarier. What can they never admit? What truth would destroy their self-image? Some more examples. I will never admit I was wrong. I will never admit I enjoyed the control. I will never admit I am the unstable one. I will never admit I caused this. That line is the crack in their mask, and your story will push them toward it. Now we get to the part that changes the feel of your pages. Writing villain scenes so they crackle. You don't need screaming. You don't need violence. You need control. Think of the best predator-prey conversations in thrillers. They are quiet, polite, and loaded. The predator holds the information. The prey wants it. Every question is dangerous. Every answer costs something. Here are 3 scenes tools that create that tension. This is tool number 1, information imbalance. The villain knows something the protagonist doesn't or pretends to. The villain says, I read your file, or I spoke to your husband, or do you remember what you said last time? And suddenly the protagonist is behind the conversation, chasing it like someone's running after a bus that's already pulling away. Information imbalance creates dread because it makes the protagonist feel watched, like they walked into a room mid-argument and everyone else knows the punchline. Let me give you tool number 2, the polite trap. The villain offers help that costs autonomy. A ride home, a cup of tea, an appointment already booked, a safe place to rest, a prescription to take the edge off. Refuse and look irrational. Accept and lose control. That dilemma is psychological thriller gold. It forces compliance without chains. Let's check tool number 3. Forced choices. A good villain doesn't demand. They present options where both outcomes serve them. If you don't come voluntarily, I'll have to call someone. If you don't take the medication, I have to document refusal. If you keep pushing, you'll upset the family. If you stop, you'll never know. This is how the net tightens without action scenes. The protagonist feels cornered in daylight. And if you want this to sing, here is the final note. Make the villain calm. The protagonist can be frantic. The villain should be steady. Steadiness is dominance. A calm villain makes the protagonist look unstable, even when they are right. So let's build one fast using the framework, no fluff. First one is the belief. I am doing this because they are dangerous and won't admit it. Notice something. In the villain's mind, this is responsibility, it is protection. Next one is the goal. They want control of narrative. They want the protagonist labeled unreliable before the protagonist can reveal the truth. Let's see the method. Procedure plus politeness. They don't threaten. They document. They smile. They escalate through concern. Next one is going to be the leverage. They have access to the protagonist's wound, a buried incident, a memory gap, a shame trigger. So in a scene, they can say, I am worried about you. You told me something last week that frightened me. The protagonist freezes because they don't remember saying anything. If they deny it too hard, they look defensive. If they argue, they look unstable. If they comply, they lose autonomy. Next one will be the line. They will never admit they are wrong because their identity depends on being the responsible one. That is your antagonist, not evil. Next point will be the certain. Uncertainty, when it's wrong, can destroy a person. Now you can see how this escalates across a novel without a single villain attack scene. The villain's method creates pressure. The pressure triggers the wound. The wound fractures perception. The fracture creates mistakes, and then the mistakes justify more procedure. That is the spiral. That is your book. So let's have a look at some homework. This is where your antagonist stops being a vague shadow and becomes an engine. Homework A, belief sentence. Write one line. I am doing this because. Let's have a look at homework B, target plus the method. Write. My villain wants something from the protagonist. They achieve it through maybe politeness, procedure, isolation, forced choices, mirroring. Homework C, leverage link. Just write one line. I can control them because I know. Now, connected to the wound you built in episode 2. Homework D, the line. Write. I will never admit it. Post your belief sentence in the comments if you want feedback, and please like, comment and subscribe, because in episode 4 is where we turn this antagonist into a full pressure system, a step-by-step escalation plan so your novel tightens like a trap from page 1 to the final reveal. As I said, please like, comment, and subscribe and hit that bell. That will be great. Next episode is where your plot stops wandering and it starts hunting. See you then, my friends.